to finish up the conversation with Amos Kaburu, Senior Programs Officer at Twaweza East Africa. So going forward, even as we take a look at the comparison we have from 2016 to 2017, what would you attribute the better performance to, since you have been tracking this for years now?
Thank you, Akisa. The good performance can only be explained by one thing, and that is by the hard work. Because as I've said previously, there was lots of contamination around results. And the contamination were caused by prior access to examinations, knowing that hard work was not necessarily the factor that was going to attribute towards performance. But this year, I can assure you that Kenyans have worked hard, and our teachers have put the best foot forward, children have had to work hard, parents have had to toil, and everyone has literally had to put in effort just to see to it that they get better results. And all these things happen because of one thing, the few spaces that are available. And not just the few spaces, but the few good spaces that are available. Because you see, we still esteem the people who get 400 marks, we still esteem people who want to go to Alliance. When you listen to the top performers, they want to go to Alliance, they want to go to Kenya High, all of them want to go to national schools. And that speaks to a serious problem that we have. And that is a problem around inequality. That unless we are able to deal with the issue of inequality, not unless we are able to deal with the issue of availability of spaces in secondary schools, that is not just enough to say that those who don't get 400 marks will go to extra county schools, will go to county schools, will go to district schools. But it's a question of what support mechanisms do you have for these schools for them to look decent enough, for them to look like schools that one you will want to go to. Assume that you've got 250 marks and you're told to go to a school. First of all, you've got a low mark. Number two, you're taken to a school that has got less resources because national schools have more teachers, they have got better infrastructure, they have got better facilities, they have got better teaching and learning materials. So in the process, it means that what this system is going to do is to perpetuate the same inequality, because those in national schools will have better resources, therefore they have a better bargaining, they have a better starting point. Compared to those children who are going to do the day secondary schools, they come from poor families, the government has not taken over some of these costs, so still households have to spend on food, they have to spend on health, they have to spend on transport, and still schools also still find a way to navigate and circumvent the policies around no charging of school fees, and they'll keep on charging. So the poor children of this country will keep on still suffering. And even as we open up all the doors for everyone, the 993,000 to access secondary schools, we are forgetting that it's not just about dumping them in those schools. We need books, we need teachers. We've not seen any deliberate mechanism to increase the number of teachers who are available, mechanisms to ensure that the teachers who are in those schools are motivated. So we seem just to be about to start replaying the scenes that we saw in 2003 when the implementation of FPE came and there were massive enrollments that were happening in primary schools, but there seems to have been very little readiness because the infrastructure that we have in the existing 8,000 secondary schools, I do not think that it's adequately prepared or prepared well enough for it to cater for these massive numbers that will be knocking at the door to be admitted in those secondary schools come January next year.
So then, as a researcher, what recommendations would you make towards that end?
Okay, the first thing that we have to do as a country is to set up what you call standards for a school. And the standard for a school will make sure that every school must have what we call bare minimums. The opposition will have called it irreducible minimums. What are the minimums that we require of a school? That a school should have specific things. It is not enough that you go to a school that does not have infrastructure, it does not have classes, and you go to another school that has got state-of-art facilities. This just doesn't make sense. So the first thing that we have to do is to make sure that the resources that put every school at bar are available to all the schools. And this has got to do with massive investment. And currently, as it is constituted, it's not going to be possible for the government to realize this. And it has got to a heart of understanding where resources lie in this country. And the private sector has significant resources. So we have to reconstruct what we call public-private partnership, in the sense that the private and the public don't seem to be competing each other. But we have a situation whereby we are able to use some of this infrastructure available, some of the resources available in the private institutions to be able to support the public schools to work. Number two, we have to improve what we call sector governance. And sector governance, what we've seen anything to do with the private schools in Kenya is that they seem to be performing far much better. And why are they performing better? It's because of the kind of governance that they have. If you look at how directors, the relationship between the directors and the so-called head teachers is very, very distinct. Now, it's very fast to make a decision in private schools, whereas because of the scale with which the government works, you're talking about 29,000 public schools, you're talking about 8,000 secondary schools, decision-making is quite difficult. There is over-centralization of decisions. Decision-making is complex and it takes a lot of time. So in the process, we end up losing quite significant resources and just be able to do the right thing. So the most important thing is now to begin thinking of how can we devolve some of these aspects for us to improve on the quality of the decisions that we make. Because if you sit in Nairobi and make a decision that every school should have a board of management of 15 people, and then you decide for every school, then you quite lose sight of the realities in this country. So it's the highest time that we started rethinking around devolution of specific aspects in education that will facilitate faster decision making, and this way we're able to harness into lots of capacities and resources that are available within the schools for us to make public schools to be quite good enough and for us to make public schools to be attractive to the Kenyan population. Because I can tell you for sure that the future of this country does not lie in privatizing education. The future of this country lies in how we make public education to be attractive enough. If today we were able to make public schools to be attractive enough, and those of us who educate our children in private schools, where on average we're spending about 30,000 per term to educate your child in a private school, if we brought these resources into the public sector, whereby we're able to educate our children at the cost of 3,000 shillings, it will make education to be better, public education will be more attractive, we will be able to get more value for our money, because don't forget that we're spending 5.3% of the GDP on education. So we ought to be asking, are we getting value for what we are investing in the public education or not?
Buru there is Senior Programs Officer at Twaweza East Africa. Thank you very much for joining us here on KTN News Desk and just giving us your views on the education system in the country currently and some of the things, some of the knots that need to be tied for it to be better. Let's take a quick break.